Rev up your engines!
Zach Hirsch says, please tell us your thoughts on the Bronco Sport. Is the 4-cylinder EcoBoost enough for it? I just bought it. I'm already having trouble with the torque converter. Well, you kind of answered your own question there. You're already having problems with the torque converter. Realize those things are all made in Mexico, not the bastion of quality. I personally think 4-cylinder EcoBoost engine is a piece of crap. I talked to the policeman in Houston before I left, and they had a bunch of those Ford Explorers that were for the police to drive around. They had the 4-cylinder EcoBoost. All the policemen hated them. They were braking all the time. I think it's a stupid idea putting that 4-cylinder in the Bronco Sport. I think it's a dumb idea, but, you know, that's what they're doing, so that's what they're going to stand behind. I wouldn't buy one just because of that engine. Look, you're already having a problem with a torque converter. It's a new vehicle. No, I would not buy a vehicle made in Mexico. Believe me, I just wouldn't. Rodney Jr. says, Scotty, my lady has a 2010 Toyota Corolla LE with 125,000 miles. Recently, we had an incident where it shut off while she was speeding to work one morning. Any advice? Well, Toyotas generally don't break down. So start with the basic. I don't know how she takes care of her cars. Check the oil. I've had guys that their girlfriends had half a quart of oil left in their car. They never changed it. They never checked. Make sure the cooling system is full of coolant. Then, if it's not that, go to any auto parts store. They can check your battery and alternator free. You got a weak battery, bad alternator, it'll do exactly that, and everything wears out eventually. Pray it's something simple like that. It probably is, because Corollas generally last forever. So check those simple things first. And if they aren't, find a guy like me to put a scan tool and drive it and see if there's any codes or anything on it. Angel H says, our Mitsubishi Montero Sports are reliable vehicles. Well, they're a lot better made than they used to be. You're not going to get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 trouble-free driving miles like with a Toyota or a Honda. If you don't mind the price and you're buying a brand new one, you'll probably be happy. You'll probably won't have any problems until it gets 100-something thousand miles on it. But this is a gigantic but. Let's say you're buying a used one with 140,000 miles on it. Unless you're getting it dirt cheap for like $500-600, I wouldn't buy it because the engine of the transmission will probably go out relatively soon. That killed all of the ones that my customers bought when they had higher mileage on them. But if you can get one cheap enough, I've had people buy them for, $500-600, drive them for 4 or 5 years, not have to put too much money in. Then when the engine or tranny went bad, they just junked them. Damn, Tilo says, Scotty, can I get away without changing differential and transfer case oil? Well, you can, but you're tempting fate. A lot of it depends on the vehicle you're driving. Let's say you're driving a Chrysler. That would be foolhardy because then it will break. It'll get over 100,000 miles. Something will break on it, cost you a fortune. Now, on the other hand, if you're driving a Toyota, I've seen Toyotas with 300,000 miles, and the differential and the transfer case oil was never changed, and they were still motoring down the road. But it's so easy to change them. You can get a little pump, watch videos. I got videos on it. You can see how easy it is to change yourself. Why not do it yourself? Do it right, save money, and then not worry about it. But like I said, a lot of it depends on your vehicle. Well-built vehicles can go a lot longer than cheaper ones. But still, change it every 70, 80,000 miles. It's cheap and easy to do. Leo Rendon says, what's a good first car? Depends on what you want, how much money you got to spend. You want a reliable car, get a Toyota Corolla. Or if you have more money, a Toyota Camry. And if you like Hondas, get a Honda Civic or a Honda Accord. Watch my videos. I'll show you a few of them that had problems so you can see which ones not to buy. But for the money and for how long they last, those are the best cars to buy. And there's no arguing it. They are the best made cars over the few decades for sure. But then again, a lot of it has to do with how much money did you have? First car I ever bought, I paid $550 for it. It was an Opel that had a fender ripped off. And I fixed the fender and drove it around for years and years and years. I'd never buy another Opel, but I got it for $550 and it went for years. So what the heck? It depends on the money you got to spend and what kind of car you want. But I mean, if you can find even an old Corolla or an old Civic that's cheap enough, they're really good cars. Skull and Hand Underground. Scotty, I'm driving down the road. I come to a stoplight. The car's AC system doesn't work right. Weird, but it's fine until idling at a stoplight. What could be wrong? First thing you have to do is find out how your car is set up. Many modern cars with this BS of the EPA to get better gas mileage will actually turn your compressor off while you're stopped and idling. I've seen a lot of Fords like that. Very uncomfortable when you're in places like Houston in the summer. It's 103 outside and the air conditioning stops working good when you're idling. Some cars are just made that way. But if your car wasn't like that before, but now it is, you could easily just be low on refrigerant. Check that. And the other thing is, Let's say you got a car that's got 2 cooling fans. Look at the radiator. If they're not both working, one of them burns out. That's exactly what they're due. So you want to check that too. Stephen Kistler says, Scotty, I got a 99 Jeep Cherokee with a 4-liter I'm working on. It's running super rich and sometimes runs rough. What could be the culprit? All right, well, it's a Jeep. And it's what? 22 years old. Could be a zillion things. But generally, they run rich because the fuel injectors are dirty. And then instead of spraying a nice little conical mist, they put bigger droplets, which don't burn efficiently, and then they run rich. You could also have a bad mass airflow sensor. You could try cleaning that. Check my video. Make your car run better with a spray cleaner. Try that first. It could be a simple fix. Cost you $12 for 2 cans of spray cleaner. But if not that, have a professional mechanic like me pressure clean your fuel injection system and pray that an injector isn't going bad. Because if they go bad, they're expensive and you got to replace them. And from my experience, really better replacing them with new ones, not the rebuilt ones. The rebuilt ones are often junk, so it can get very expensive. Eric says, Scotty, are high preference car parts better than OEM parts? And do you recommend replacing OEM parts with the high preference parts? You might pay for them, but is it worth it? Do they last? Well, if they're a high quality manufacturer, yes. I had a friend years ago who worked at an aftermarket high-performance place, and he said, look, our company was actually the company that originally engineered the exhaust manifold for that particular engine, and so then when we build them ourselves, not for the company, but build them ourselves to sell them to the people as high-performance parts, we already designed the original ones and redesigned it to make it work even better. So a lot of times the parts actually work better. You got to make sure it's a good company, because a lot of companies are BS and they say they're one thing and they're not. First thing is, if you look at stuff and if it's made in China instead, I'd originally kind of balk on a thing and say, no, I'd look for another one, because they sell a lot of junk. Some of their stuff's okay, but you never know, right? Unless you've dealt with that company before. So if it's a high quality company saying United States, Canada, Germany, or Japan, sure, pay a little bit more, get a better part. But if it's made in China, I'd be real iffy about that. Jose Guillen says, Scotty, ever heard of British Leyland? I used to work on British sports cars all the time when I was a kid. Unfortunately, they went down, especially in the 70s, they went way, way, way downhill. Their quality was just absolute garbage. You look at a late model MGB, those things are absolute rolling piles of junk. And I mean, MG itself, they got bought by the Chinese, and now they make little SUVs. They don't even make the sports cars anymore. They made the MGs for a while. They were Chinese-made cars, and they didn't really sell. So now they make SUVs, and they're selling them pretty good in China and Europe. So, but yes, the Chinese company now. The British car manufacturing industry is pretty much going down the toilet. But the only real thing that they still make are Fords. There are other brands. Most of them either got elitist things where only rich billionaires can buy them. And their regular cars, they all went down the toilet. Mark Migliarni says, Scotty, will a Civic 1.5 last 100,000 miles if you take care of it? Psh, I've seen those things last 500,000 miles. You take care of it. You change the oil regularly. Oil is cheap. Engines are expensive. Don't listen to any of that crap 15, 20,000 mile oil changes. Change your oil every 5,000 to 7,000 miles and use synthetic oil, and it will last. Take care of it. Those are well-made cars. Honda makes some of the best engines in the world. Martin Mueller says, Scotty, how long do Denso ignition coils last? Should I change all 4 or only a defective one? Well, back in the day, they generally last forever. The coils that are on my '07 Matrix and 2002 Lexus, they're still the original coils, all of them, and they still work perfectly fine. Now, if one goes bad, what the heck? You could replace one. But then if another one goes bad soon after, I'd replace them all. But over the years, I've replaced Denso ignition coils with new Denso ignition coils, and they worked fine for a while, years sometimes, before they had other ones go up bad. But I don't advise having 3 Denso coils and then going like AutoZone, buying some cheap Chinese replacement one and mixing them. They don't mix and match. You want to keep the same brand, all 4 the same brand. Tallboy 100 says, Scotty, is there any way to prevent wasps from nesting inside your car mirror? Yeah, spray it with insecticide. They don't like the smell of it. And if you spray it, it'll kill the ones that are in there, but they don't like the smell of it. They smell that, they go away. It's going to wear out, so you might do it once a month or something, and then they won't come back in. It's a pretty easy thing to do. They smell that, they stay away. Anything, kind of insect repellent, it gets on their feelers and stuff, and then they go away. Vincent Smith says, morning, I got a 1996 Dakota, 60,000 miles. I have to replace the motor mount on the driver's side. Working on it as we speak. What are some tips to get that oddly placed bolts off? All right, make sure you have good tools that fit cleanly on. Now, I have a bunch of ratchet sets, and one company's called Gear Drive, and they make really good ones. And what it does is, say if it's 17 millimeter, you put the box end on, but it's got a ratcheting assembly that can move up and down so you can get to any angle and then unbolt them easily. Sometimes they're at really weird angles and they're hard to get to. And the reason that I say you want the good ones like a gear wrench one is because they can turn just a tiny fraction of the 360 degrees and start to unbolt them. The cheaper ones, you got to move them a whole bunch before they'll click and ratchet, in which case you got a small working room, they don't work. The good ones, they work with a tiny space, and then you'll be able to wiggle it enough to finally break it loose. If you don't have a set of those gear wrench things, get them. They work really well for tight spaces. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.